So starting a D&D campaign is a lot like starting a great novel, a really epic movie, or a long-running TV series. You need a strong hook, a compelling setup, and most importantly, a reason for everyone to care. And yet, so many campaigns that I've played in, that I have heard about, that I have seen, they start with nothing. The DM will go, and so to start our session, you all meet in a tavern. And you're sitting at the same table together. Go ahead and role play. Huh? What? Ew. No. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what's going on. There's no stakes. There's no context. And most importantly, there's no real motivation beyond, well, I guess we're here now. And listen, playing D&D sometimes is better than no D&D. And having a rough start where there doesn't really seem to be a sort of guiding light at the beginning isn't the worst thing in the world. You can still have fun playing that way. But after what just happened with my campaign that just started, the Crimson Court, believe me, you want your campaign to start off with a bang. So if you want to hit the ground running with your campaign and keep your players hooked from the very beginning, you need to start strong. And that means splitting the beginning of your campaign into 3 key parts, okay? I'm going to front load this video with the good stuff at the beginning. First thing you want to do is have a session 0. This is where you're going to talk about the game itself, the rules, and any safety tools that you feel is necessary as a DM. The session 0.5, which this session is entirely focused on the characters. Finding their voices and testing the water, something entirely tailored to that individual player character, one at a time. And then finally, your first session. This is the big moment, and most importantly, it will include the inciting incident. This is the thing that says the story has begun, and there is no going back. So let's go ahead and break down each one of those parts, so that way you can see exactly how to kick off your campaign with a bang. Pew, pew, pew. Partner, we have our part 1, which is the session 0. Session 0 is your foundation. It's where you establish rules, expectations, and themes of your campaign. You do this so everyone is on the same page before the dice even hit the table, before they even start to make their characters. So this is where you're going to go over house rules, any changes you're making to the game mechanics. Maybe this is spell components are harder to find. Maybe you're using a unique homebrew system for death and injuries. Or maybe, God forbid, if you really hate your players, you're banning counterspell. Another thing that you want to talk about in your session 0 is triggers and boundaries. This one is really important. Every player needs to feel comfortable at the table. The first step to having fun is feeling comfortable around the people that you're trying to have fun with. Session 0 is where you're going to discuss topics that people don't want in the game. Things like body horror, heavy themes like torture, slavery, or even abuse. And this one is very important. What is everyone's threshold for PvP? If this is a new group of people that you're playing with, specifically about triggers and boundaries, you probably want to have like an anonymous survey, since they might not be inclined to be honest because they don't want to ruin anybody else's fun. So make it anonymous if you don't know the people very well, but if it's people you've been playing with for quite some time that everybody's comfortable around, talk it out. The key is D&D is a game for everyone to have fun, not just 1 or 2 people for, 1 or 2 hours at a time. Ideally, everybody should be having fun during the full session whenever you play. And finally, in the session 0, the last thing you want to talk about is the world and the tone. So is this a gritty survival story, a swashbuckling high fantasy adventure, a world full of political drama, full of intrigue and betrayal? Players need to know what they're walking into so they can build characters that fit the setting. When you don't talk about the world and the tone and the setting, that's what happens when you go into it saying, you know what, I really want to do like a magical girl, Sailor Moon style campaign in D&D. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And you go into it with that idea, and you maybe talk about it with some of your players, but you don't mention it to one, and then all of your players make kind of Sailor Moon-esque fantasy girls, and then you have Jeff, who shows up with not Geralt of Rivia, who's super dark and edgy and gritty. And the rest of them are like, oh, ooh, like we don't want that at the table. I mean, you might, it could be fun, but for that player, it might end up being a little grating to their character, and they feel like they made the wrong character. So we just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page about the tone and the setting, so everybody can make compelling characters for that campaign setting. Because what works in one campaign setting, what works in one genre or flavor of tabletop RPG campaign will not work in others. So that's why you want to stress to your players before they even start making their characters to sit down at the session 0 and let's talk about this first before you start to brainstorm too many ideas. All right, so now we move on to part 2, session point 5, letting the players find their voices. Your session point 5 is going to be all about the characters. So this is right before your players drop into the main story and they need a moment to figure out who their character is. How does this character talk? What drives them? What relationships matter to them? If you've ever done theater or ever participated in a theatrical production in your life, think about this as like a dress rehearsal for the PC. There's no major story beats yet, just a chance to step into the character's shoes and get comfortable. I think that this one works best if we talk about a specific example. So let's go ahead and talk about the Crimson Court Point 5, which premiered just a few weeks ago on Twitch. As of this video coming out, you can actually catch session 3 tomorrow on Twitch at 8 p.m. Eastern time, so be sure to tune in for that. In my campaign specifically, the Crimson Court, the players are the children of the current king of the nation of Adaria. Due to some complicated relationships and talents past, the line of succession is unclear between the noble-born children of his and the bastards, 5 kids total. So each one of these kids are nobility, just different slices of nobility, and they've had different lives growing up. So I had my players in this point 5 start as children, going through a sort of ceremony that all kids in Adaria go through, the nation that they are the heirs to, where they pick one item from 3, and they keep it for the rest of their lives. It's something that they cherish and they hold, and I'm sure will definitely not come up and matter at all in the campaign, period. They already did in session 1. Love that. Or session 2. They already did in session 2. Woo! Love it when that happens. So, for example, right, it could be like a sword, a book, and a locket. When I set up the moment, I let them define their character in this sort of single instance. And I told them, pick based off your character as a whole, not what 12-year-old Xanthi would pick, or 1-year-old Edwin. Sometimes just be that transparent with your players. Tell them you know. Everything you know. Do something with that. Just as a small sort of nugget to throw in here, sometimes as a DM, you're afraid to just be fully open and honest with your players. Don't be. One of the things that I do really consistently in my games is I pull back the curtain sometimes and I say, yeah, pick this item based off of what you know as a character as a whole, not just in this one moment. Or, at the beginning of combat, this is what the mechanics in the fight are going to be like, especially if there's a more in-depth mechanic. And I explain that mechanic at the beginning so the players know about it going into it. As much as I wish this was a video game where players could reload their save and try again and again and again, it's not. You're playing on Iron Man mode, all right? This is honor mode in D&D. When your characters die, unless you're lucky enough to have a high-level cleric that you can go to, they're dead. And so you want to make sure that you're being open and honest with your players and transparent about things that, well, if you're inspiring something off of a video game, understand that that's not what D&D is. So yeah, there's your one sort of golden nugget. Be transparent with your players, be open and honest with them, and let them know. Then the part 2 of their session, point 5, I wanted to give each one of them a solo scene where they have an opportunity to interact with a character from either their backstory or just an NPC from the world. So, in the context of the Crimson Court campaign, I had one of my player characters, Via. She is the Archmage's apprentice. So in her point 5, she ended up interacting with that Archmage, getting to have a little bit of roleplay back and forth with them. and then exploring something related to the Archmage's study. But in your particular sessions, a few more examples could be a thief attempting to make a deal with a crime lord, a scholar meeting their old mentor, or maybe a warrior sparring with their commander. Each one of those things are just a way where the player can get comfortable, because they know their backstory, and they have an idea of who their character is, so giving them this opportunity to really thrive in that setting by themselves is really important in giving them the confidence to succeed when they get to the session 1, right? You want to set your players up for success. Then finally, that sort of final half point, so step 2.5 of the session point 5, is something to pull them in to the session 1, into the main story. For my players in particular, they received a letter from Talon asking them to come to the council chambers within the next few days in order to meet as a family and discuss something very important. This sets up all the players to get to the same location at the same time with stakes. So when they enter the council chambers one by one in the session 1, there's a lot of tension already because they don't know what's going to happen. Is somebody going to be picked as is somebody going to be named as heir, or is our dad dying? What's going on? And the players felt that same way too. There was so much excitement and energy going into that first session. They were ready to bust down the doors, and that's why we ended up playing our session 0.5 and session 1 on the same day, because they didn't want to wait. They wanted to dive right in and hit the ground running. And that was the first sign to me that I was doing something right, because the players were insistent about playing, about continuing to play, and their energy in the game told me everything I was doing was just what it needed to be. So they felt good about their characters and were ready to dive right into the story, into the world, and into the adventure they were about to go on. And then finally, part 3, your session 1, the inciting incident. This is it, okay? This is it. The session 1 is the most important of them all, because this right here is where your campaign officially begins. Okay, and we are out of the YouTube void. We'll be heading back there in a little bit though. So in your session 1, there are 2 things that you need to do. Deliver your final bits of exposition, the world, the factions, the key players. Keep this light. I see you, okay? I know you want to lore dump immediately to your players about all the cool things that you did. I will be talking about that subject in a later video this month, so make sure you subscribe for that. I'm going to be going into the things that Tolkien says that you should do when it comes to world building, so make sure you subscribe for that. But don't do it in your session 1, okay? Do not! Look at me! Look at me! Come in! Come here! Don't fucking do it, okay? Because if you do it, I'm going to come to your house. I'm going to come to your table. I'm going to come in your Discord server. And I don't know what I'm going to do. But it's not going to be pretty. Okay? All right. So do not do that, okay? Jeff, Jerome, George, all you guys, I'm looking at you, all right? You too, Kathy, okay? Don't do it. I know how hard you worked on the world you built and the narrative that you created and all the NPCs and all the history. Yeah, me too, okay? All right? But that's not the point. The session 1 is to dive into the adventure, not into the world that you created, okay? Which brings us to the second thing. We don't have time to get into lore and history and world building because we need to hit our players, smack dab in the gob, with the inciting incident. Because this is the moment when the adventure really begins and everything changes. What is the inciting incident? Now, I've said this before, but if you happen to not have been paying attention in your 9th grade English class, the inciting incident is an event that forces the main characters of a story, or your players in this instance, to take action. It is the moment that makes the rest of the campaign inevitable because they can't just go home and live a normal life after what happens in the inciting incident. It needs to be something big, all right? There's no going back after this. So then, what did I do in the Crimson Court? What was my inciting incident, right? If I'm going to hammer this so hard, what did I do? Well, I'll tell you if you'd stop asking, okay? I'm getting to it. I ramble a bit. Be patient, okay? Tabitha, all right? Please, breathe. I don't know why I'm yelling at so many people individual. I promise I don't know anybody named Tabitha. And if your name is Tabitha and you're watching this, I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to yell. But what did I do in Crimson Court? That's what I was talking about. So in the Crimson Court campaign, like I said before, all the player characters are children of the king. And the kingdom is on the brink of civil war because the line of succession is unclear. So what happens? I mean, that's a really good hook, but why should the players care? And why should they be forced to work together as opposed to having a sort of Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire shtick where they're all trying to get each other assassinated or send the kingdom into civil war? Why aren't they doing that? Well, that's because their father, Talon the Kind, like I said in the point 5, he sends them a letter and he calls them home. And he says, I'm reforming a special organization. It's known in history books as the King's Hand. You all will serve on it together, and whoever proves themselves most worthy will inherit the throne. The players are forced to work together for the betterment of the kingdom, with the temptation that one of them will get the throne. So now, not only do they have to work together, but they have to try and do better at this job than whatever their siblings are going to do. The campaign has begun. This happened within the first hour of the first session. Now the players can no longer ignore the issue. They can't just walk away. They have personal stakes, but they also have to work together or risk tearing the kingdom apart. This is a clear, a concise, and a powerful inciting incident. Once you have that, you're free to jump into the adventure. The setup is done. The players locked in. They can now explore, fight, and shape the world however they want. With that, we come to our sort of final thoughts, the things that you should be thinking about and the main things you should take away from this video. When you start a campaign the right way, you set the tone for everything else that comes after it. The session 0 is so important because it lays the groundwork. That is the stable foundation that the campaign is built upon. The session 0.5 is the framework for the house, right? This is the frame that everything else is built upon. It also needs to be sturdy. The players need to be able to find their characters. And then finally, the session 1 is going through room by room and decorating and filling out the house with all that good stuff that you want in there, that you need in there. It delivers that moment that sets everything else into motion. If you follow this structure, your campaign won't just start strong. It'll be a story that your players remember for years. So go forth, start your campaign with a bang, and may your players never, ever, ever again meet in a tavern for no reason at all. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed. Be sure to subscribe if you feel as though we've earned it. Be sure to like the video, comment, and tell me what you think about the structure I presented here. Do you think that session 0s aren't really worth it? Are you a why was this a meeting? It should have been an email person? I totally get that. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments and continue the discussion down there. Thanks for watching, everybody. Be sure to subscribe for the next video over Tolkien world building tips. And we'll see you in the next one. And also be sure to tune in to the Crimson Court campaign this Saturday, tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. Thanks for watching. We'll see you later.